But it was physical. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was my mentality going into it. Like, I grew up again with my brother and my cousin, and you got older cousins and brothers. They put you through it as a youngin'. You know what I mean? They twist you into all types of pretzels and they make you tougher. So that was like my first thing, was like, you go hit. That's how I grew up, was you go hit, you go smack, you try to run through somebody. And that was the mentality all the way up through high school. Was, you know what I mean? There was none of this stuff now where it's like you're not trying to hit somebody. Like, we try to run through somebody.
We're back with one more down. Today we have Don Edwards, PENNSBURY Falcon, number 44, running back, defensive back out of Morrisville, Pennsylvania. Don was one of my great friends as we came into Edinboro University together in 1993, both as defensive backs. And I got to know this man over the course of my 4 years in college, and he became a great friend to me. So it's a pleasure to have him on today to, get some insight into the player that he was during his high school days, and then catch up to him with what he has going on now in his post-athletic life. So I appreciate you coming on today, Don, and giving me a chance to catch up with you and, just relive some of the memories that we had back in the day.
Well, Ron, thanks for having me on here. I know you got business to take care of, but before we get there, I just want to talk about them Redskins and that butt whooping we gave y'all in the championship game. And the Birds won the Super Bowl, so I just want to give you a little jab for that.
Well, you guys didn't defeat the Redskins. You defeated the Commanders, and I retired as a fan when they changed the name. So, kudos to the city of Philly for bringing it home for the second time.
Yes, sir.
As we get started with these conversations, we generally like to get a good feel of who the person is and where their beginnings start at. I got to know a little bit about you, during the time that we were roommates and, of course, teammates and friends during the course of our college years. If you would you like to, begin with your family dynamic and some of your upbringing coming up in Morrisville area?
I'm part of a pretty decent sized family. I got a lot of aunts and uncles. My mom and dad were married phew, 40 years before my dad passed away. A few years ago, maybe about 4 years ago, my dad passed away from a tick bite, which was kind of crazy. I had one brother. My brother also passed away from diabetes. So, anybody watching that, take that seriously. Make sure you take care of it. He passed away at 40, and that was my only other sibling. Um, but our family was, super close growing up. My dad and my uncle owned a garage together. So basically, since I could remember, those two worked together. And, my Uncle Joe was also a big influence on me, almost like a second father, along with my cousin Joe, almost like a second brother. Um, that's where I would go Saturdays and, you know, get taught different things. I mean, was cutting grass over there. My dad showed me some different things as far as, automotive stuff. Um, so that was, and again, we'd have a lot of big family events. My uncle's house was the meeting house. So 4th of July, things like that. My uncle, they would just show up. There wouldn't even be no party scheduled, but people would just show up at the house. So we were super close, kind of growing up. And, as we get older, people start spreading out and things start to get a little bit more disjointed. But family's still close, love them to death. Miss my brother a lot. But great family, man. A lot of great role models growing up. I always think that's important to have a lot of, male role models. And I had that growing up. I was very lucky. Wasn't a lot of people getting in trouble. Everybody kind of was doing their thing. So very positive family. Very happy to belong to them.
When I met you, coming up from that East Coast, me being a Midwesterner, we generally pull from a lot of guys in my hometown area around Youngstown, Ohio. But occasionally we cross over across the line into Pennsylvania. A lot of it has been Western Pennsylvania. So you're the first guy that I get to talk to that gives that East Coast flavor and that flair of what high school athletics is and what it's like growing up in, those outer stretches of the Philadelphia, Trenton area. For you, when does your athletic life begin and what is that first influence for you in terms of like formal competition?
It's weird because my dad really wasn't into football or really any sports other than when it was Thanksgiving. Then he thought he knew everything about football, even though he never watched. My mom's brother actually went to Syracuse and played defensive back for Syracuse. So really, my first really inkling was just watching football on TV, playing it around like street football and stuff like that. Because I ended up I was in Willingboro up until about third grade, and then when I moved over to PA, I started playing football seventh grade year, seventh grade year of middle school at William Penn Middle School. For my coach, Coach Messier, who probably was the biggest influence probably on me playing football, as far as somebody who gave me confidence. And I was his first tailback to actually start 2 years in a row for him from 7th and 8th grade. I had played running back and linebacker, but I had always wanted to play football. You know what I'm saying? Like I love hitting. I love the hitting part of it. Love being aggressive. So it fit what I wanted to do. And like I said, I was his first tailback. We went the first year we went undefeated. Actually, no, my first year we gave up one touchdown the entire year because that was like one of the things that we liked to do at that school was like my cousin played there, my brother played there, and going unscored upon was like the big achievement. So my first year we gave up 6 points the last game of the year to our rival Penwood, and my cousin gave me a lot of smack for that. And then the next year we went again undefeated and didn't give up any points. So that was kind of like the basis of me really starting my football career. My coach Messier was, he was awesome. This guy I actually played basketball with, when I became an adult. Just a great guy and a great coach.
So, with us being 70s babies, um, I'm sure some of those influences for you were probably some of the same for me, the Walter Paytons of the world. You were watching this running back dominated era of football and this hard hitting era of football. If you could kind of give a description and a characterization of, what the core mentality of football is in your neck of the woods, how would you describe that?
Physical. Like you said, like Walter Payton was like an idol of mine. Like I used to get this book that I used to get out the library, and it would have him on the cover. And I used to read through that book. I don't know how many different times. Like he was like my favorite player up until Barry Sanders came along, but he was like my dude. But it was physical. You know what I'm saying? Like that was my mentality going into it. Like I grew up again with my brother and my cousin, and you got older cousins and brothers. They put you through it as a youngin'. You know what I mean? They twist you into all types of pretzels and they make you tougher. So that was like my first thing was like, you go hit. That's how I grew up was you go hit, you go smack, you try to run through somebody. And that was the mentality all the way up through high school was, what I mean? It was none of this stuff now where it's like you're not trying to hit somebody. Like we try to run through somebody. And that's like the mentality, I think, at least for me when I was growing up and even the people that I played with was to go hit.
Now, I remember, watching some clips of your middle school time, and like a lot of guys, you had great size for those grade levels, and you're very dominant out there, scoring at will, almost to the point of you don't even want to score anymore. But you know, in some cases, for some guys, that puberty levels out, and then you find yourself on the smaller end of the metrics. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but what I can say about you and our time at Edinburgh is, you were a fearless guy, and that was the main part of your game that stood out was your ability to deliver great contact and not fear guys that were bigger than you or outweighed you. So, you kind of given that characterization and that illustration of what football is and how it began for you, it matches what you brought to Edinburgh University. I'm kind of interested in kind of getting a little bit more in depth of your brother's influence and, some of the guys that come from your area that may have played ahead of you. What was it like to kind of watch them in front of you and then move on into those upper grades and start playing high school football?
Well, my first kind of really entered it's funny because Troy Vincent went to Pennsbury High School, right? So I think it was 87. We went to the high school, like it was the end of the year, the big game against Neshaminy High School. But that team there was probably one of the biggest teams that Pennsbury's had. Like the kicker was like 6'4", 230. Like they had some big boys out there. And like I'm in seventh grade, eighth grade, somewhere around there. And I'm like, damn, do I really want to play high school football? Because these jokers is huge. I'm like, I don't even, you know what I mean? Because when you see big people hitting, and you still kind of a little dude, you just like, you know what I mean? There's a part of you that questions whether you could play at that level. You know what I'm saying? So that was my first introduction in watching them. There was a running back there named Herb White, big dude, 6'2", probably around 200 pounds. Like another guy, James Bodley. I mean, so it was like those guys I watched and, they influenced me away. My cousin Joe, he also played. He wasn't the biggest guy. He's playing D tackle. He wasn't much. He's no taller than I am, but he brought physicality regardless of what his size was. So watching them play, that's the level I knew I was going to have to try to get to play high school football. So those are kind of like my main influence and people that I kind of watched Growing up was mainly just my high school because I didn't really go around watching other high schools play. So it was just mainly watching PENNSBURY, um, throughout the years because my brother played. One of my best friends, his brother played on there. So it was always we would go to the games and watch. And at some point you feel like you can play. um, and actually, another guy I used to play football with, he was on the rival team of mine. His name was Randy Cox. He was a running back for Penwood. He was a grade ahead of me, but I'm like, he was no bigger than I was, and I'm like, if he can play, I can play. You know what I mean? So those are probably my most of my influences to play.
With you guys being so close to that New Jersey Pennsylvania line, is there any difference between Pennsylvania style of football and a New Jersey style of football, in your opinion?
We didn't really play. I'm trying to. I don't remember. We didn't really play New Jersey. I mean, we did play a couple schools. We never played Trenton. We played, I think it's Cherokee. We played a couple schools out in New Jersey, and I think we did pretty well against them, from what I recall. It was a long time ago, but I think we did pretty well against them. Like our basketball teams would play Trenton, and Trenton would come in and put the beat down on them. But as far as like football, we never really played Trenton. But like we did play a couple Jersey schools, and we did well against them. But I think the mentality is pretty close because we were like pretty like PENNSBURY is probably like 20 minutes from New Jersey. So that little tri-state area, I think the football is pretty much very similar. We also played we also played Harrisburg one year. Um, but I think the tri-state area, the football is pretty similar as far as like the physicality that everybody brings. Um, so I say it's pretty similar. Now things have changed because everybody's doing the spread, and what I mean. PENNSBURY's still running the rock now because the coach Galen Snyder's back over there. They're running like the wing tee or whatever like that. Everybody else is running spreads and everything like that. So, but running the ball is always going to be effective.
Can you tell me a little bit about your experience entering into PENNSBURY High School and those first forays and getting accustomed to Coach Larry Green's system?
Well, the first coach we had was Coach Al Matuza. He had been there for a very long time. He actually played. He played pro football. I think his dad had played pro football. He was a wild coach, very very old school. He's one of those spit and slobber coaches. Nice dude. He was a math teacher at PENNSBURY as well. Very nice dude. So he was my first introduction as far as like coaching wise, as far as at the high school level. Um, as a sophomore, I did get to play. Um, I played mostly, I got things, special teams mostly as a sophomore, kickoff coverage, things of that nature. Because actually, when I first got into high school, that I was playing linebacker because I had played linebacker basically from middle school, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. I played linebacker. And then when I got to be 10th grade, I was still at linebacker. And then my junior year, I switched over to playing corner. But the first year was just, I mean, you're really getting used to the speed and the size because, like you said, when you're 7th, 8th grade, you're pretty much doing what you want for the most part. Everybody's kind of your size for the most part. You're running to a couple big people here and there. Once you get to high school, dudes are trying to get scholarships, so they in the gym, they lifting, they doing some different things that 7th, 8th graders might not have been doing back when I was playing. You just showed up and played back then. So getting used to the speed and the size of people.
You mentioned the lifting aspect. One of the characteristics about yourself for your size, you were like extremely strong. What you could do on the bench press. It didn't match looking at you from the eye test, but you were a guy that would get after it in the weight room. Was that a big part of the program there coming through high school?
Yes, I mean it became more my senior year because we had like the Coach Green that you spoke about earlier. He had like the 1,000 pound club, so that was what a lot of people were striving to get into. That was like bench press, power clean, squat. I think it was just those three lifts. So that was like something that we all strive for. My senior year, but all through those years, I would be lifting through like mainly during like school year, like during the summer. We didn't really have like too much of a program as far as like coming up and lifting too much until my senior year. When Coach Green came in, it was more like the season lasted the whole year. You know what I mean? Where it was like before, it was like you just go do your summer thing. So yeah, and I always just enjoy being in the gym. You know what I mean? So being part of the 1,000 pound club was was a great accomplishment. Like I said, I'm not the biggest guy out there, but I always wanted to put the work in and do what I could in the weight room. So yeah, it's something I enjoy. I mean, even to this day, I still enjoy it.
Now, I see that you guys had a championship team in 1990, and then you go 6-5, 6-3-1 your senior year. Looking at the team stats from those time periods, you had a year where there was a couple main rushers, but it seemed like the last 2 years you guys kind of shared the ball pretty evenly among the backs in you guys' system.
Mhm.
Um, how did you feel about that at the time, in terms of your ability and your place in that pecking order?
Well, the truth is, I thought I would should have been the lead runner. Like I'm not gonna, lie about that. I thought I could handle the load, um, but I was also playing defense as well. So that was always like a lot of the excuses. Oh, you're doing both things, and a lot of us were going both ways. So that was part of it. I thought I could have handled a more load, and that's really what I wanted to do coming up through football was to be a running back and to do my thing out there. But it got shared, and end of the day, it was fine. But when it initially happened, yeah, I wasn't thrilled about it. I mean, I wanted to tote the rock. But it worked out. I mean, like I said, I was playing both ways. A lot of guys are going both ways, so a lot of the offense and mainly offense was split on a lot of people, so it wasn't just me.
You garner first team all league honors, and a few publications your senior year for a defensive back. I looked at the stats, and for a senior year and a guy going both ways, your stat line is pretty solid. Um, what were your aspirations? After that senior season came to a close, and then what was it that took you to Edinburgh over any other choices that you may have had at the time?
Well, I mean, I didn't want to go D3. I mean, there was a few coaches that spoke to me from, I think it was like Kings and some other schools, and I'm like, I don't know. And then somebody from Edinburgh contacted me, and I went up there for a visit, and I'm like, I like this. Plus, it was far from home. If I would have known how much of a snow belt it is, I might have changed my mind. But I had liked the school. I like what the coach had to say. Um, so that was my choice because originally I honestly really wanted to go down south, but I didn't really talk to any of the schools down there. So, but that's how really it came to Edinburgh. They came and spoke to me, and I went and did a visit, and I liked the school. So that's you know, where I ended up.
So stepping into that territory, I'd like to get your thoughts about those first experiences of camp for you, our freshman year in '93. What was your mindset, and then what did you think of the process and what transpired afterwards?
Initially, I'm like these some big dudes out here, because we had was it Mike Kegerice who I think he played for Seattle for before the knee injury that he had. Nice dude though. So just like I said, it was another step up of size and speed that you're trying to get used to. I mean, I think everybody on the team for the most part was super cool. But it was like that first. It was that summer because we came up there for summer camp, so it was just kind of getting used to the guys there. We're playing talk and all types of stuff. Everybody was just really, really cool. And my roommate at the time was our, big kid. I was the first person I roomed with. They didn't have no radio stations. I think they lied to me. They said that Erie was the third largest city in PA. There was no black stations. I had to go out and buy the Chronic just to have some music to listen to. So that was kind of my first experience going up there. Like I'm like, yo, this is not no city. Like where we at up here? You know what I mean? But that was like my first introduction. I said, Big Kid was my roommate. Again, the guys were cool, and then like I said, mostly getting used to the size and speed of everybody up there.
Now, compared to your experience playing in high school and, program expectations and what the standard was for that level of football, what did you think about the organization and, the things that they were teaching us in terms of technique or how they evaluated us as players that first year?
Technique was way different because I don't really think that I was taught too much technique in high school. It was, really just kind of relying on your. I'm not saying you didn't get taught any technique, but it wasn't as extensive. It wasn't as detailed. So that was different. And again, when you start dealing with faster athletes, like you can't be, messing up your zone turns. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you make a false step with a lot of these guys and you're cooked. A lot of times in high school, if you just got ability, you don't have to worry about your footwork so much. You know what I mean? So, I mean, depending on where people you're playing, you're going to run into somebody that'll get you. But for the most part, you can get away with sloppy technique when you're in high school. When you start to get to college and things like that, your sloppy technique's going to have you eaten alive. So that was the biggest thing, is learning the different technique. When Coach E came on, he was teaching us to weave and all that type of stuff like that. So that was a lot different than what high school was. Because like I said, it was mostly they told you to line up. This is how you line up, and then it was like you kind of almost on your own.
You know, you brought up Coach E, and the spring going into the second year, you made the decision to step away from football for good. You know, what was behind that decision? And then once you made it, how did you as an individual, you know, decide for yourself to carry on without the sport that you had played and loved for so many years?
Well, that decision, I forget what some coach said something. I don't remember even exactly what it was, but I'm like, all right. And then it was a combination of something that a coach said, and then me looking at what was actually going to be important for me at the end of the day. Because sometimes you as a youngin, you want to go pro and you got these dreams, and then sometimes you got to look at reality and like, yeah, I'm not going pro. Right? So I'm 5'8". I don't run a 4.1. I'm not at Florida. Like, I'm not going pro. So what am I going to go pro at? Get your grades together and make sure you graduate. So that was the biggest decision, was what the coach said, and then me looking at, let me just focus on what I need to focus on, which is graduating college. So that was how my decision was made, was to make sure that I graduate first and foremost. Um, And I don't regret that decision at all. There's never been something I'm like, oh man, I should have played. I wish I would have stayed with it. It's not something I regret. Did I miss football? Yeah, of course. You know what I mean? It's something that I've been doing since, seventh grade. So yeah, it's something that I missed, but I don't regret the decision at all, because at the end of the day, I got my degree. And that degree has helped me, further my career since I've left Edinboro. So no regrets there. Um, I did other things to sustain it. I think we had a flag football league there for, in Edinburgh, did intramural sports. So it's always something that I'm always trying to do something competitive because that that hasn't left me, that competitive spirit and wanting to go out and compete. It's just you find other things to do. It's flag football. We played on we had the basketball team we won, we won the chip with, intramural chip with. So it's like, you find things like that to kind of occupy your time and, stay competitive.
Now, for you, I think that's a mature decision to be able to make at that age and that time of development in your life, because for all of us, we eventually have to move on from that athletic identity. But you were able to make a choice for yourself a little bit earlier in the game than the rest of us were. Um, have you always been that level headed and introspective about you and what you wanted for yourself out of life?
I believe so. Um, doesn't mean you're always still going to make the right decisions. But it's always something that I've always tried to look at the bigger picture about things. Again, doesn't mean you're always going to hit the right road or not make a wrong turn, but you do your best to kind of look within yourself and see what your next move is going to be. Um, and I've always tried to be level-headed. I'm not some guy. I'm not jumping, going crazy, and all that type of stuff. Like I'm always trying to look at oh, what happen here? And again, look at the bigger picture, and again, see what moves I think is going to be best for me at the end of the day. But again, you don't know if that's always going to be the right decision because I've made some bad decisions. You know what I mean? It doesn't stop you from that. We're all human. We're all going to make mistakes. But I'm always trying to look at the kind of more worldly type view, and not just kind of like right now. Okay, if I do this, what's the outcome going to be? So that's always how I've tried to look at things. Since I've been young, like I don't think I make too many rash decisions. I always try to think things through to the best of my ability, whether it works or not. You know, that's a whole nother discussion. But I really do try to look at the bigger picture.
And then, for you, um, are you able to talk about any of the adverse effects of the game or adversities in life that kind of shape you going forward into adulthood? And then, if you can, are you able to pull any examples from your athletic experience that help you persevere through those difficult times?
I don't think there's really any adverse effects from playing, at least for me. Um, the only concussion I might have had was not playing high school. We were playing a pickup game like before we had a game on a Saturday. And we ended up having a day off from school for some reason, and we played a pickup football game. And me and this kid, ended up hitting heads. His tooth went flying. I'm bleeding. I had to go to the emergency room. We cut the pad and the helmet out just to fit over top of the where I got hit at. And it was like every play that I was hitting, like I was getting up dizzy. I just never said nothing to the coach. So that might have been the only time I had a concussion. And yeah, I probably shouldn't have been playing. Like there was times I had to come out the game, then I'd go back in. Now, yeah, they put you in like concussion pro. They probably wouldn't have let me play now. I had no real bad injuries. Um, my ankle was messed up for about almost 2 years because I never went to the doctors. I just kept getting it taped up and kept playing. So that even bothered me. Like even after high school, my ankle was still kind of weak. Same thing with my knee. Again, never went to the hospital. But like as far as like any like adverse effects now, who knows? I'm old now. You know what I mean? Some of these pains could be from football. Some of these pains could be just waking up in the morning. But no real adverse effects. as far as like how football like shaped some things, as far as like not giving up, that competitive spirit, um, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's, playing pickup basketball. I think that's something that, when you're an athlete, that competitiveness stays with you. Sometimes, we get older, we can't find places to harness it any longer, but like, I think that competitiveness is always going to be there. Me and you used to be competitive. We used to play the game. You know what I mean? We used to play the what was that? What was that? NBA? What game was that we used to play?
We play anything that would
No, but
allow
it was
you
the, it was the
to get a
NBA
W.
games. I remember you went and got everybody's stats and made all the players.
It had to be the probably the college basketball or one of those
Yeah, I don't know, man. But
Coach Krzyzewski games.
We used to rock that like crazy. But I think that competitive can take you, along a lot of places. Is also as far as like I was a captain, my senior year. So you're kind of in that leadership position, and I think that can also help you in the workplace. And you got to have some type of confidence to play. Like you can't go out there and be scared. So I think when it comes to interviewing, when it comes to speaking in front of people, the one job I had, like I had to, I worked at this place called Bo Robinson. It's in Trent, New Jersey. I had to give lectures in front of 300 inmates that didn't want to hear it. So like you got to fake some confidence to get up there and talk about some things. So, and then just like the social aspect of it, you're going to get to meet a lot of different people, a lot of different cultures. You're going to be, getting interviewed, those type of things. So it's like you get to work on a lot of different things being an athlete that you maybe didn't think of when you were actually doing it. It was just like, all right, like one of our coaches had us do like a radio interview after one of the games. So it was like, all right, cool, we're gonna go do this radio interview. But again, it's almost like what we're doing now, but you don't think about it at that point, like this is some big deal or nothing. Like, oh, I'm just doing this radio interview. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you get some chances to public speak. Again, the leadership part of it, the competitive part of it is, the point that you're going to be hurting. You're not going to be feeling your best, but you're also not going to give up. So I think that's also part of being an athlete is to having that part of you that's just like, all right, I'm going to keep going.
Your son, he followed in your footsteps in terms of pursuing football. Ended up having, excellent high school career. Your daughter is out there giving track a go now. Can you touch on fatherhood and how that shaped you, over the years?
Well, I mean, fatherhood's been an experience. Me and their mom, I was a single dad for them. My son was 8 and my daughter was like 4 when we separated. So basically I was a single father up until now. So that was an experience that wasn't easy. So that that was a whole, like, you don't understand, I guess, when you have somebody that's, side by side with you. Like you can't even go to the store without like packing the kids up and, all that type of stuff. So that was, and then the separation because I'm down here, like Marsville, and then it's like she was 8 hours away trying to navigate the, pickups and drop offs and all that type of stuff, doing it in the snow. And yeah, it was kind of crazy. But we made it work. Her side of the family and her, they did an excellent job as far as the influence they had on the kids. This wasn't just because I was, the main person that they stayed with. This wasn't a one man thing, and it wasn't like I was the only one that made the influence. Their side of the family did an excellent job, put a lot of great morals into my kids. As far as also my side of the family. So they had, even though we were separate, the families in a way kind of molded them together. And I got great kids, you know what I mean? Like as a parent, the biggest thing you don't want my kid is not in trouble. My son's down in Texas currently, but we'll get to him in a second. But it's being a father is almost like being an athlete. You know, you're gonna have your ups and downs. It's gonna be a struggle, but you know, in some ways, got no choice but to keep, you know, making things happen. You know, what I mean, if the, you know, making sure the house is heated, there's food in there. Like you got to figure it out. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing on the field when things ain't going good or a coach you don't like the call. You got to figure it out. And you know, I think I've done that over the years. My daughter's in 11th grade. She's going to graduate next year. And I'm like, she's such a, she's such a great little woman at the moment. Um, she's good people. My son is good people. And as a father, that's, you want them to be successful outside of life and career, but the main thing is you want to have raise good people. And I think, you know, both sides of the family, you know, has done that.
You know, getting to this point of our talk today, we always end on that philosophical question of if you had one more down. And that could be athletically, it could be philosophically, or it could be, you know, just a point of your life that you would give a crack over. You know, if you had that one more down to do over for yourself, you know, what would you choose? What would that scenario be? And who would be a part of it?
Wow, that's a that's a deep question. um, man, probably if I had one more down, you know, I'd probably maybe change how things have turned out with, you know, me and my kid's mom. At the end of the day, um, you know, some decisions were made that, you know, maybe should not have been made, and if, you know, we could have stayed together and kept the kids together and raised them together, probably would have been the best for them. So probably that. You know, because sometimes we think we want things and we think we know what's best for us sometimes, and you make some selfish decisions, um, even though you think it might be the right decision, or, you know, vice versa or whatever. Sometimes we know you're making some selfish decisions at the end of the day because you're making them for yourself and maybe not thinking, you know, about some, you know, ramifications of those things. Um, so probably that. You know, because the kid's mom, you know, she passed away from colon cancer a couple, 2 years ago, 3 years ago now. Um, you know, with us separated, there wasn't that time spent with them as it could have been if we were together, because it was like, you know, she get them for the summer, and then, like, you know, Christmas because it was a long holiday. Um, so, you know, with us not being together, there was time that wasn't um, shared with her that maybe could have been.
You know, we've had a relationship in terms of being friends for 32 years now. You know, I've seen you as a guy that uh, was always up for a good test of physical pursuits. Um, you know, I've watched you over the years develop your manhood, your fatherhood, and, you know, the response that you give is just a reflection of that growth and a person that's seeing things from different perspective and always having a willingness to have an honest conversation with who you are for yourself. Um, you know, listening to you, you know, reflect and talk about those better days on the field, some of the things that you go through off of the field. You know, uh, it's actually a reconfirmation of the respect that I've always held for you because you've always been a level-headed guy, slow to choice, but quick for a result. You know, and I think that's a good way to go. You know, some people crash into things head first with, and they'll worry about the aftermath on the other side of that. But you've always been a guy that's gonna take a moment to think, calculate, and make a sound decision. I appreciate you, jumping on here with me for these few moments, talking a little bit about yourself and maybe coming a little outside of your comfort zone of putting the spotlight on yourself. But, as I think back to the guy that you were, everything about you was sneaky because, there's more than meets the eye when it comes to you, and that's in terms of, uh, physical play, whether it be on the football field or on the basketball court. You were a guy that someone would easily underestimate, but always pay the price in that underestimation. So I thank you for jumping on here with me and doing this today.
I appreciate that, man. You didn't have to call me sneaky though, man. That's kind of bad, bro. That's kind of bad. I mean, you're right about something though, about the slowness sometimes. Because I always had this quote: "I don't regret the lesson. I regret how long it took me to learn it."
That's a good quote, man.